Bronx Zoo, Part 1. The Field Trip. The Bronx Zoo was a symphony of shrieks, chirps, and the distant roar of big cats, all underscored by the chatter of hundreds of schoolchildren. For Ms. Anya Sharma, it was the culmination of a month-long unit on biodiversity, and also a special kind of torture. Herding 23 seventh graders from Washington Heights was like trying to contain a cloud of hyperactive gnats. Miguel, get down from there. Sarah, stay with the group. Leo, if you throw another piece of your sandwich at the peacocks, I will personally ensure you do your next book report on taxidermy. Her voice was hoarse, but a smile played on her lips. Despite the chaos, she loved these kids. They were bright, resilient, and saw the world with a raw curiosity that her own jaded adulthood had long since lost. The star of the trip was Leo, a small, wiry boy with an encyclopedic knowledge of animals, who was currently narrating the behavior of the African wild dogs with the gravitas of a seasoned documentary filmmaker. See how the beta is submitting to the alpha? That's to maintain pack harmony. It's all about social structure. Fascinating, Leo, Anya said, placing a hand on his shoulder. Now let's keep that social structure intact and move towards the world of reptiles before we lose Javier. She pointed to a boy who was already halfway to the monkey house. As they moved through the crowded paths, Anya noticed something off. The usual background hum of the city felt wrong. More sirens than usual, and not the normal traffic distraction kind. These were urgent, clustered, and growing closer. She saw a few other adults glancing at their phones, their faces tightening with confusion and then concern. "All right, everyone, huddle up," she called, her teacher voice cutting through the din. "Let's take a quick break by the sea lion pool. I need to make a call." She tried her phone. No service. A cold trickle of unease traced its way down her spine. That was impossible here. The zoo was in the heart of the borough. She looked around. The zoo staff, usually calm and visible, seemed to be moving with a new purpose, talking into walkie-talkies with strained expressions. Then the first scream came. Not the delighted shriek of a child, but a raw, adult scream of pure terror from the direction of the main entrance. It was followed by others, a wave of sound that washed over the park, silencing the animals for a single eerie moment. Panic, contagious and instantaneous, erupted. The orderly flow of visitors became a stampede. People ran in every direction, crashing into each other, abandoning strollers, their faces masks of primal fear. "To me, everyone, to me now," Anya screamed, her own fear giving her voice a piercing authority. Her students, wide-eyed and terrified, clustered around her like frightened chicks. She did a quick head count. 23. Thank God. "Ms. Sharma, what's happening?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. Before Anya could answer, they saw it. A wave of people surged from the entrance plaza, and among them were figures that moved wrong. They were twitching, jerking, their movements aggressive and uncoordinated, yet terrifyingly fast. One of them, a man in a security guard's uniform, lunged at a woman, sinking his teeth into her arm with a ferocity that was inhuman. The children screamed. "We have to get out of here," Miguel yelled, pointing towards the exit. "No, not that way," Leo shouted, his voice surprisingly firm. He pointed to a service path marked Staff Only that snaked away from the main thoroughfare towards the back of the zoo. "The main gate is a choke point. We'll get crushed. We need to find somewhere to hide until this passes." Anya looked from the chaotic main path to the calm, forbidden service road. The teacher in her screamed about rules and liability. The survivor in her listened to the 11-year-old zoologist. "Leo's right. Everyone, hold on to the person in front of you. Don't let go. Follow me." She led her flock off the paved path, pushing open the unassuming gate and ushering them into the behind-the-scenes world of the zoo. The sounds of the panic faded slightly, replaced by a new, more immediate terror. The animals were going berserk. The primates in the nearby Congo gorilla forest were shrieking, hurling themselves against the reinforced glass of their enclosure. The big cats were roaring, a deep, resonant sound of fury and fear that vibrated in their chests. They ran, a single desperate entity, until they found a small, concrete maintenance shed tucked behind the Himalayan Highlands exhibit. Anya shoved them inside and barred the door, plunging them into near darkness, broken only by a single grimy window. They were safe. For now. 23 children, one teacher, trapped in a zoo that had become a hunting ground. The civilized world, with its rules and barriers, had vanished in an instant. The field trip was over. The lesson in survival had just begun. Part 2. The New Food Chain. The shed was claustrophobic and smelled of grease and damp concrete. For the first hour, the children were too terrified to speak, huddled together, flinching at every scream and roar from outside. Anya did another head count, her hands shaking. 23. Still 23. It was her mantra, her anchor in the spiraling chaos. Leo was at the window, his face pale. The lions. They've stopped roaring. What does that mean? Javier asked, his voice small. It means they're either hiding or hunting, Leo whispered. As if on cue, a new sound joined the cacophony, a high-pitched, chittering screech, followed by the sound of something small and fast scrambling over the roof of their shed. The children shrieked and ducked. Japanese macaques, Leo identified, his voice trembling. The snow monkeys. They sound different. Angrier. Anya's mind raced. They couldn't stay here forever. They had no food, only a single water bottle she'd been carrying. The shed was a temporary refuge, not a fortress. Leo, she said, keeping her voice low and calm. You know this zoo better than anyone. Where can we go? Somewhere defensible with water, maybe food? Leo closed his eyes, visualizing the map he'd studied obsessively for weeks. The children's zoo, he said finally. It has a petting barn that can be locked from the inside. There's a water pump for the animals, and they might have bags of feed oats or something we can eat. It's also away from the big predators. It was a plan, a fragile, desperate plan, but it was something. Anya peered out the window. The service path seemed clear for the moment. All right, listen up, she addressed the group. We're moving. We're going to be quiet, like mice. We stick together. If I say run, you run. If I say get down, you hit the ground. Understood? A series of nervous nods greeted her. She unbarred the door and they slipped out, moving in a tight, silent group. The zoo was a surreal landscape of abandoned strollers, dropped cameras, and dark stains on the pavement. The air was thick with the smell of popcorn, fear, and something coppery. They moved past the Himalayan highlands. The exhibit was eerily quiet. The normally placid snow leopards were nowhere to be seen. The gate to their outdoor habitat, a heavy steel door, was hanging open, its lock shattered from the inside. Something immensely strong had forced it. Don't look, just keep moving, Anya urged, herding the children faster. They were almost to the bridge that separated the main zoo from the children's zoo when they saw them. The macaques. A troop of about 20, but they were no longer playful. Their eyes were wide and frantic, a strange, milky film over them. Foam dripped from their bared teeth. One of them was gnawing on a severed finger. They moved in a jerky, unnatural pack, their intelligence seemingly warped into a feral, single-minded aggression. The monkeys saw them. A chorus of screeches erupted, and the pack surged forward. Run! Anya screamed. They sprinted across the bridge, the children's backpacks bouncing, their little legs pumping. The macaques were faster, scrambling on all fours, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Into the barn, Leo yelled, pointing to a large, red-painted building ahead. They burst through the doors, and Anya, along with Miguel and the largest boy, Carlos, slammed them shut, throwing the heavy iron bolt just as the first bodies thudded against the wood. The screeching from outside was deafening, enraged. They were safe. For now. The barn was dim and smelled of hay and animals. It was empty. The petting zoo animals had either escaped or been taken. They collapsed, gasping for breath, the reality of their close call setting in. Their relief was short-lived. From the back of the barn, near the stalls, came a low, wet, growling sound. It was a sound they had all heard on nature documentaries, but never in person. It was the sound of a predator. Slowly, from the shadows, a shape emerged. It was a wolf, one of the Mexican greys from the nearby exhibit. But it was wrong. Its head was tilted at a broken angle. One of its front legs dragged uselessly behind it. Its fur was matted with dark, dried blood, and its lips were pulled back in a permanent snarl, revealing gums that were black and necrotic. Worst of all were its eyes cloudy, vacant, but burning with a mindless, ravenous hunger. It wasn't just sick. It was infected. And it was between them and the water pump at the back of the barn. The rules had changed again. They weren't just hiding from crazed people and escaped animals. They were trapped with a creature that was both, a perversion of nature that felt no pain, no fear, only an endless rotting hunger. The food chain had been rewritten, and they were squarely at the bottom. Part 3. The Heart of the Jungle. The zombie wolf let out a guttural snarl, a sound that was half choke, half roar, and took a lurching step forward. The children screamed and scrambled back, pressing against the bolted doors, which still shuddered under the assault of the macaques outside. They were trapped between a pack of rabid monkeys and a single undead predator. "Everyone, behind the hay bales, now!" Anya commanded, her voice cutting through the panic. They scrambled, tripping over each other to get behind a stack of large, rectangular hay bales that formed a makeshift barrier in the center of the barn. The wolf's head swiveled towards the movement, its milky eyes seeming to track them despite their apparent blindness. It moved with a horrifying, disjointed gait, its broken legs scraping against the concrete floor. "Ms. Sharma, it can't see us, but it can hear and smell us," Leo whispered, his body trembling violently. Anya's eyes darted around the barn, searching for anything they could use as a weapon. Pitchforks, shovels, all the tools were locked away in a cabinet. All she had was her wits and the crushing weight of responsibility. "Miguel, Carlos," she said, her voice low and urgent. "When I say so, I need you to make noise. Bang on the hay bales, shout, anything. Draw its attention to the far side of the barn." "What are you going to do?" Sarah asked, her face streaked with tears. "I'm going to get to that water pump," Anya said, gesturing to the metal hand pump at the back, near the wolf's original position. "There might be a hose, something we can use. Leo, is there anything about wolf behavior, anything at all that can help?" Leo, pale but focused, shook his head. "This isn't a wolf anymore. It doesn't have a pack structure. It doesn't have fear. It's just a thing. A hungry thing. It would have to be enough." Anya took a deep breath. "Okay, on 3. 1, 2, 3! Miguel and Carlos started yelling and pounding their fists against the tough hay. "Hey, over here, you mutt!" The wolf's head snapped toward the sound. It let out another wet growl and began to lurch towards the noise, its path taking it away from the water pump and the back door. "Now," Anya hissed, and she darted from behind the hay bales, sprinting silently towards the pump. Her heart felt like it was going to burst out of her chest. The wolf was halfway to the boys, its back to her. She reached the pump. As she'd hoped, a thick green garden hose was coiled next to it. She grabbed it, her hands slippery with sweat. Just then, Javier, who was watching the wolf, let out a small, terrified whimper. The wolf stopped, its head cocked, listening. It had heard him. It'd forgotten the loud noise and was now focusing on the scent of fresh, close fear. It turned, its blank eyes seeming to lock onto Anya, who was now exposed in the open. It charged. Or rather, it lunged in a broken, horrifying sprint, covering the ground faster than she thought possible. There was no time to think. Anya acted on pure instinct. She swung the coiled hose like a lasso, not at the wolf, but at a metal support beam overhead. The end of the hose, with its metal connector, wrapped around the beam once, twice. She pulled it taut, creating a tripwire just a foot off the ground. The wolf hit the line at full tilt. There was a sickening crack as its already broken front leg caught the hose. The creature somersaulted forward with a yelp that sounded almost normal, crashing headfirst into the concrete wall with a force that shook the barn. It lay still for a moment, then began to twitch, its legs scrambling uselessly, its neck clearly broken, but its jaws still snapping mindlessly. Anya stood, panting, staring at the twitching, impossible creature. She had won, but she felt no victory, only a cold, sick horror. The banging at the main door had stopped. The macaques, it seemed, had lost interest or found easier prey. Silence descended, broken only by the wet, snapping sounds from the immobilized wolf and the quiet sobs of her students. They had water. They had a temporary safe haven. But as Anya looked at the faces of the children, their innocence shattered, their world reduced to this barn and the horrors outside, she knew the hardest part was yet to come. They couldn't stay here forever. The zoo was no longer a place of wonder, but a microcosm of a world gone mad. The lions were silent, the monkeys were monsters, and the wolves were abominations. She gathered the children, turning them away from the twitching creature. "We're safe for now," she said, her voice hollow. "We have water, we'll rest, and then we find a way home." But as she said the words, she knew the home they remembered was gone. The only home now was the one they could carve out of this new, savage world, a world where the bars of the cage had vanished, leaving only the raw, unforgiving law of the wild. Their field trip into the animal kingdom was over. They were now permanent residents.